You know, many of us are difficult to really capture some of the things that happen in some of the simplest stories in the Bible. Most of us get really upset when we think about how Jonah sat and was unhappy because the people of Nineveh had repented. But I'd suggest to you that we miss a very important point at the beginning of the story of Jonah. It's one of the stories that my wife likes the best that I preach. But not this particular part of the story. And it appears to me that this is just as important as how the story ends. You see, in Jonah chapter 1, verse 2, God says to Jonah to go to Nineveh. Now, Jonah didn't want to do that, but he didn't pray and he didn't talk to God about it. As a matter of fact, he ran the opposite direction. Notice what I said. He didn't pray. In verse 4, it says, the Lord hurled a great wind against the ship that Jonah was on, and Jonah didn't pray. In verse 4, it says the ship was about to break up. Jonah still didn't pray. In verse 5, it says all the sailors called out to their gods. Jonah didn't pray. As a matter of fact, Jonah went to sleep. In verse 6 it says, and this is all still in chapter 1, verse 6 it says, the captain pled with Jonah to call on his God, and Jonah didn't pray. In verse 7, the sailors cast lots to see who was responsible for this terrible predicament they were in, and the storm that they were in, and the lot fell on Jonah, and Jonah didn't pray. In verse 10 it says, they confronted Jonah with his disobedience to God, and Jonah didn't pray. Instead, he said, just go ahead and throw me into the sea. In verses 13 and 14, still in chapter 1, the sailors prayed to Jonah's God and said, save us. Jonah didn't pray. In verse 15, while in the sea, Jonah didn't pray. And when God sent a large fish in verse 17, Jonah was inside of that large fish for 3 days and 3 nights, and Jonah didn't pray. It wasn't until Jonah thought that he was absolutely going to die before Jonah in chapter 2, verse 7 says, when my life was ebbing away, I remembered you, Lord, and my prayer rose up to you and your holy temple. Now, that may seem really strange to you. It seems really strange to me that Jonah could go through all of this and not pray. But wait a minute, before you get too hard on Jonah, how many times have you been told by God to do something and you didn't do it? And you didn't pray about it? How many times have the storms of life been tremendous and you didn't pray? How many times did your ship feel like it was going to break up at any minute and you didn't pray? When others were calling on their gods, did you pray to yours? When people plead with you to pray, do you pray? When the guilt is clearly upon you, do you pray? When you're confronted with the very fact that you are disobedient to God, do you pray? And when you're in the midst of the storms of life, up to your neck in the sea, do you pray? Or like Jonah, do you wait until you've been in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights before you finally realize, I'm going to die unless I pray? You see, I think we Christians are very guilty of that. I think we use prayer as a last resort instead of a first resort. And many times we have to feel like we're going to die, or somebody around us that we love is going to die, before we really get serious about prayer. I hope that as you look at this devotion that you'll remember the first course of action, whether it's the fact that you don't like something and you feel like God's asking you to do something you don't want to do, or whether it's when you're feeling like you're going to draw your last breath, that you'll pray. Talk to God about it. Don't wait till it's too late. Prayer should be our first step, not our last step. And that's your thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.